Good afternoon. It is truly a privilege and an honor, and it's a very humbling experience to be with you today. President Schattenberger, Mr. Miller, Mr. Gorman, Mr. O'Connor, Mr. Kasnitz, Mr. Billy, thank you for the honor and privilege of allowing me to come before my brothers and sisters in public service. When I say my brothers and sisters in public service, I say that in the most humble way, because I would not be here today speaking before you as the mayor of the city of Toledo or any of those things were it not for my brothers and sisters in public service. I come from the ranks of a police officer. I spent 28 years as a police officer with the city of Toledo. I served as the president of the TPPA, which is the Toledo Police Patrolmen's Association. That's familiar for Washington people because everything you say is in initials around here. You speak your own language. So I guess I'm right at home when I say TPPA. But to give you a bit of a story about what happened, and then I want to segue into something else. When the Senate held their debates on Senate Bill 5, I went to Columbus with my wife. And my wife, frankly, is a Republican, and I've been an independent all my life, having never been in a party. And as she would say, that's not my fault, or her fault, that's my fault. But I went there, and when I testified there, I testified in opposition. And as I arrived at 9 o'clock, because the doors were closed, so I arrived there early, and you had to submit your speeches in that, I was the third speaker to speak that morning. Well, that morning came, and that morning left. And they went straight through the lunch hour and then into the midday. And I sat in a room waiting for my opportunity to speak. Once your name was called, if you found yourself not available to take the podium immediately, you would be bypassed, and that would be your opportunity, and it would be an opportunity that you wouldn't have. The evening came, and we hadn't had supper, and frankly, she snuck some orange juice and a cookie to me, which the highway patrol sort of turned their back on. And I said to her, I said, because we live 2.5 hours from Columbus, I said, "What are you thinking?" And she said, "Damn it. Jimi Hendrix waited till the middle of the night, and I don't give a damn if we do too, because you're going to speak." And that was the position she took, and she's a Republican, and it's a Republican administration. And I spoke that evening. There were 3 people left when I finished, and we got home about 2 o'clock in the morning. And then the next foray down there was to speak before the House of Representatives. And as I spoke before the House of Representatives, and trust me, this was the first opportunity I'd ever had to do any of those things, apparently I missed the protocol, and as I finished what I was saying, one of the congressmen from a western part of the state started screaming at me when I talked about the strike of '79 and what it was like when we went collectively begging as opposed to collective bargaining. And he called me a disgrace to public safety. And I said to him, I said, "I would strongly suggest that you see an audiologist, sir, because you haven't heard a word I said." At that time, the highway patrol started coming up. My wife said, "Well, let's see, what will his bond be tonight?" Because she was pretty sure I was going to get thrown in jail for what I said. He got up, slammed the door, and left the room. It cost me my job at the University of Toledo. I was a professor there as a result of it. It was all worth it. It was worth every part of it. And now I will tell you why, from a different perspective, why I say it was worth it. The strike of 1979 is not a well-known strike, but yet every single organization in the municipal employees groups all went on strike because of what was going on. We had what was then called the Ferguson Act, which made it illegal to have a union. It was illegal to organize, although the city of Toledo did in a pattern bargain, but it was a very superficial pattern. And that strike was devastating to the city. It was absolutely a turning point, and the legislation that was passed in 1983, I have to submit to you, was a direct response to the lack of civility and those events which took place in Toledo in 1979. That is the reason why I went. Well, in 1979, I had another opportunity. I wasn't involved in the TPPA. However, the president of that time called me over off the picket line and asked if I would sit with him and discuss strategies as to where things were going, which I did, and I embraced the concepts that night. And there's one person, quite frankly, that had the greatest influence on me, and that was a firefighter. His name was Captain John Branshaw. And he came to me and he said, Michael, you deserve the thought, at least, to become a leader. Follow where you think you need to take this organization. That was the TPPA. I listened to him, I engaged, but I really didn't get active. I was then asked to be on the next negotiating team, which I did, and then I led the following 4 negotiating teams. Did run for office and did ultimately become the president of the union. One of the things that we did in the course of collective bargaining was this. The city manager form of government was placed at the time, and they came to us and they said, on the economic negotiations, we're going to give you more than fire. And as one would readily understand, my negotiating team stood there, took out their calculators, and started figuring their raises. And I said, we're not taking it. We are not taking and breaking parity. Because if we break parity, thank you. If we break parity, that'll be a price that we will always pay, and they will pay too, and we are not going to do it. My team looked at me and they said, the membership's going to get mighty upset with you. I said, they will learn to understand that there is no way we're breaking parity. We have each other's backs, and I'm not turning my back on them under any terms or conditions. And we did not break parity. And that relationship, even though I am retired, is as strong can be. We've had 2 very tragic situations. 7 years ago, last month, we lost a police officer in the line of duty. And it was Local 92, the firefighters, who carried the water for the police officers and the TPPA through this tragic set of circumstances. And then tragically again, in the end of January, we had that terrible, terrible experience of losing 2 of our firefighters. And it was the police officers who picked it up, and they carried the baton. And that's what's necessary in order for us to survive. So when I started out and I said, my brothers and sisters in public safety, you are my brothers and sisters in public safety, and I will go to my grave knowing that to be true. Now, this is not a bit of Irish humor that I'm about to share with you. This is a true story. It occurred last Friday. I happened to be here Thursday and Friday, flew home on Friday night, and then came back in last night. Well, as from this hotel, we were going back over to the airport, and on the airport there was a mayor from California, and I won't mention his name, and his staffer, and there were 3 other people. Turns out 3 of us were mayors as well. And the mayor from California said, I don't know about you mayors, but I'll tell you what, those damn cops and firefighters are greedy bastards. They take 80% of my damn budget, 80%, and they take the whole thing if they could. So across the aisle from me, a gentleman, Latino gentleman, said, sir, I think you ought to know your audience before you start espousing your beliefs. I was a police officer for 26 years in southern Florida. The gentleman in front of him said, yes, I think that's quite correct. You should be knowing who you're speaking to. I'm a firefighter. I was disabled in a wildfire in California, and I served 17 years. So I looked over and I said, hey, you just got the trifecta. And then the bus driver looked over and he said, I can top you all. I was in the Department of Corrections for 17 years, but I was an inmate. So needless to say, it was a quiet ride from that moment on to the airport. But going back to my election just briefly, the International supported me. Mark Sanders from the Ohio, the state organization supported me. Jeff Romstadt and Dan Desmond supported me. Firefighters were the reason why I was able to be here today. Police supported me too, by the way, but they don't support in the same way. I mean, they do not support in the same way. The firefighters showed up at the precincts as the voting was going on, wearing their attire, and that has a positive effect. And to tell you how positive that is, I'm going to roll back to 1979 again. I proudly am wearing today a pin on my lapel, which I wear. And it is called a unity pin. And this came about as a result of that 1979 strike. And it has on it a pistol and a fire hose, well, a nozzle actually, and it says unity on the top. And I strongly encourage those same relationships to be across the country, because that is what will hold us together. That's the epoxy we need. Because when a politician tells you what they're going to do for you, you need to stop and ask them that big question. What have you done for me in the past? Because your past is a better barometer as to what you're going to do in the future. And so with that unity pin, I said to them, I have your back. And I will always have your back. And I will, as I said, have their back. We're going to do some things under my administration that has not been done in the past. We're going to interspace bargaining. We're going to stop the chicken dance. I've been to enough of them and I know what they're about. And this idea as to when everybody walks away from the table angry you've had a successful negotiations is nonsense. It's rubbish. It's not true. All you do is walk away from the table angry with one another. We have to come up to a higher level, and that's what we're going to be doing in Toledo. And I listen to my firefighters. I listen to all employees. I couldn't do, people have said to me since I took office on the 2nd of January, how did you get through these months? I mean, we've had 3 level 3s, for those of you in California, in Arizona, and Utah, and those states. Level 3 is no one's allowed to drive. It was kind of like this was a little shower this morning and they shut down everything. That wouldn't happen in Toledo, I assure you, or Buffalo or Cleveland. But under any event, or Lorraine, but under any event, it was there. And I said to them, I said, let me just share something with you. I, as mayor, deserve no credit whatsoever. I deserve none. The people that deserve the credit are those men and women who basically, they went to work. They went to those firehouses and they protected you. They went to their police station and got in their cars and they protected you. But you know who else did? That individual that you very seldom ever give any consideration to. That individual who works 12 hours a day on a plow and dropping salt and making sure the roads are as safe as they can be so that safety forces as well as others can travel safely. That individual who crawls out of a hole in the ground at 10 below zero due to a broken main and comes out looking like an icicle. Those are 2 heroes too. Heroes we don't necessarily always recognize. So last Wednesday I had breakfast over at our Department of Public Utilities with those heroes, and I told them, I said, when you come crawling out of the ground looking like an icicle, I know that occasionally idiots will drive by and they will wave to you and they'll demonstrate that they suffer from an extreme case of arthritis in one finger. And I said, but those people are in the nickel seats. So I'm going to end by saying this to you. It's an honorable profession that you are in. And the reason why I talked about the nickel seats is this. Those same politicians, those same individuals that tell you how much they love you when they need you are really nothing more than pandering. Ask them what they've done for you before they tell you what they will do for you. That is the key to it. And I'll end this again by saying sláinte, and that is an Irish saying farewell. And thank you very, very much for this honor and privilege. And have a great convention.